Hello, good morning. Today we'll be going over flexibility. We're going to be using 3 assessments for the sit and reach and 2 for flexibility of the hips. For all flexibility protocols except the chair sit and reach protocol, you want your participant to engage in a moderate intensity warm up consisting of 5 minutes. The participant should also have their shoes taken off. The first test that we will be assessing is the Thomas test. You will be assessing the hip flexors of the participant. You will have the participant lay in a supine position or on their back. The participant will bring their leg that is not being tested in the direction of the chest to the point where the lumbar spine is snug to the floor. If the tested leg rises, their hip flexors are likely inflexible. If the leg remains in contact with the floor during this maneuver, the hip flexors for that leg are flexible. Once finished with the assessment, you will record whether the hip flexors in the right and left leg are flexible or inflexible. Moving on to the flexibility assessment of the hip extensors, the participant will perform the straight leg raise test. A gognometer will be used to assess the measurements for the participant. When you use the gognometer, you will provide the participant with an overview of the process before the assessment begins. You will be sure to demonstrate proper technique for the movement of the joint that is being assessed. You will also instruct the participant to move slowly through the proper range of motion, and during the movement, the gognometer needs to maintain proper orientation that is relative to the predefined anatomical landmarks. When beginning this test, you will have the participant's lower back in a snug position against the floor or table. The tester will raise the participant's leg, making sure that the other leg remains extended and flat on the floor or table. You will measure the angle of flexion with either a gognometer or inclinometer. For this assessment though, a gognometer was used. So to measure the angle, you will place the axis of the gognometer on the greater trochanter of the participant. A minimum angle of 80 degrees is acceptable for this passive straight leg raise, and an angle of 90 degrees is desirable. You will record the angle of the participant and report if the range of motion is acceptable or unacceptable. When beginning the YMCA sit and reach test, there should be a yardstick placed on the floor and tape should be applied across the yardstick at a right angle from the 15-inch mark. The participant needs to sit with the yardstick between the legs, with their legs extended at right angles to the tape line on the floor. The participant's heels should touch the edge of the tape line and be about 10 to 12 inches apart. The participant will then slowly reach forward as far as possible, keeping both hands on the yardstick, holding that position for 2 seconds. The participant needs to keep the hands parallel and does not stretch or lead with one hand. The fingertips of one hand can overlap the other hand, and the hands should be in contact with the yardstick. The participant should exhale and drop their head between the arms when reaching forward. The participant needs to keep their knees straight, and the tester should not press the knees down. You will then have the participant perform 2 test trials. You will record the best of the 2 trials in inches. Based on their score, you will categorize them in accordance to this chart. The participant is 30 years old, and for both trials, he reached 15 inches, categorizing him in the 50 percentile ranking. The chair sit and reach test is an assessment that is used for sedentary individuals or individuals 60 years and older. The equipment needed for this assessment is a chair that has a seat height of 17 inches and that won't tip forward. An 18-inch ruler will also be needed. To begin the test, you will place the folding chair against a wall for stability and then have the participant sit on the front of the edge of the seat. The participant will then extend the leg that is being tested in front of the hip with the heel on the floor and the ankle dorsiflexed approximately 90 degrees. The participant's other leg should be flexed so that the sole of the foot is flat on the floor about 6 to 12 inches to the side of the body's midline. With the extended legs straight as possible and hands on top of each other, palms down, the participant will slowly bend forward at the hip joint, keeping the spine straight as possible. The head should be in normal alignment with the spine and not tucked. The participant will reach down the extended leg, trying to touch their toes, and will hold that position for 2 seconds. To measure, you will place the ruler parallel to the participant's lower leg, and to score this test, the middle of the big toe at the end of the shoe will represent a 0 score. If the participant reaches short of the toes, then it will be recorded as a minus score. If the participant reaches past the toes, then this will be given a plus score. For the last flexibility assessment, we will be doing the Canadian trunk forward flexion test, otherwise known as the standard sit and reach test. To begin, the participant will sit without shoes, and the soles of the feet should be flat against the sit and reach box at the 26 centimeter mark. The inner edges of the soles are placed within 2 centimeters of the measuring scale. The participant will then slowly reach forward as far as possible, keeping both hands on the flexion meter, holding that position for 2 seconds. The participant needs to keep the hands parallel to each other, making sure not to stretch or lead with one hand. The fingertips of one hand can overlap the other hands, and the hands should be in contact with the flexion meter. The participant should exhale and drop their head between the arms when reaching. The participant needs to keep their knees straight as possible, and the tester should not press the knees down. The score will be the most distant point reached with the fingertips, and the best of 2 trials will be recorded. Norms for the sit and reach box is when the 0 point is set at the 26 centimeter mark. If using a box in which the 0 point is set at 23 centimeters, you will subtract 3 centimeters from each value in this table. The participant is 30 years old and scored for both trials 28 centimeters, categorizing him as being fair in trunk flexibility.